Here we are at the First Presbyterian graveyard, and there's a couple cool stories. I'm gonna go check it out. Okay, this graveyard has a directory, a couple graves today. It's hard to see if that's the Reverend Dr. Stephen Foster, and another one up here would be Abner Baker. Let's go check it out. Here we are at, it's kind of hard to see, that is the Reverend Dr. Stephen Foster. So the story behind this guy is back in the 1800s. He was not only a doctor but a pastor of the Second Presbyterian Church downtown, and there was a hanging one time downtown where they had a young guy who murdered somebody, and then there was an older gentleman who murdered somebody, and while they were hung, the younger guy got taken away in a wagon right after he got hung. The other one got buried, and he was taken down to Second Presbyterian Church and taken into the church. And some people followed along to see what happened here because they didn't understand why he was being carried away and the other one's being buried. And he was taken in the church to the back, and some of them crawled up on the walls and looked through the windows and noticed that Dr. Reverend Stevens actually was doing an experiment, Frankenstein experiment. He took some electrodes and hooked him up and tried to shock him and electrode him about 3 times, and each time they said that the specimen took a breath. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. And after that, he put everything back. They didn't know where he was actually buried, this guy, but he thinks that since he was out of town that maybe they took him back to the town, the church said. Now, nobody actually really ever has a record of this. This was just written out in the articles that came about for several years after somebody found a body on the Gallows Hills, what they call it, where the other older gentleman was buried, and the sheriff was still alive. He said, retired sheriff, he says, "Hey, I know who that was. That was the guy that hung many years ago." And that's when the story came out about Dr. Reverend Stephen Foster, and he is the first Frankenstein experiment here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Now, one of the things that you can see, there's some writing on his there, which is kind of hard to read, but it says, "Mysterious are thy ways, O Lord. I don't know who chose it, but they must have known the doctor well." And there you go. First Frankenstein experiment in Knoxville, Tennessee. Good deal. Hey, here's the downtown Crooch, this is pronounced. And right there's the old building that actually was where the old Second Presbyterian Church was actually located at. Right there, that corner building where the famous Dr. Stephen Foster did his experiments. some really cool history in this place. But right here is one of the most famous, you might say, happenings, ghost story, thriller, murder, etc. historical thing that happened in Knoxville back in the 1800s around the Civil War. And this guy right here, Abner Baker. So Abner Baker was the son of Dr. James Harvey Baker. And Dr. James Harvey Baker was, you might say, brutally or shot and killed in his own house, which was being used back in West Knoxville as a hospital for the Civil War. A lot of the Union troops came in here and thought he was a spy or Confederate synthesizer, and they busted down in his house and went through and shot him through his actual bedroom door and killed him. The door's still out there, and the place is now called Finn's Tavern, and it's considered haunted. There's a lot of videos been done on that, as well as some paranormal investigations. Abner Baker came back after the Civil War. Of course, he was disheartened because his father's dead. He went downtown one day, don't know why, but he was always feeling like maybe this guy had something to do with it, called William Hall. He went down and confronted him, William Hall, or evidently talked to him. William Hall evidently hit him with a walking stick, but Abner pulled a gun and shot him and killed him. The sheriff came later and arrested him, took him to jail, but a mob couldn't stand that, so they went and got him out of jail and took him and hung him on a tree down toward the river somewhere. And just as immediately after he was hung, and they caught his body the next day, and when they were having a funeral, just wild people said they saw his ghost all over the place, and all the flowers wilted in the actual funeral. A lot of weird stuff started happening. Even when the tree died and fell over, nobody wanted to take the wood because they figured it was haunted with his spirit. And also the fishermen down there said that they could always see him hanging there at night on that tree when they were fishing down there. Really scary. That's one of the most scariest ones. And they say if it's about 12 o'clock at night, if you're sitting here, you can actually see a black hooded character or black hooded, you might say, ghost or figure walking around the graveyard, and beside him is a soldier in gray, which a lot of people say could be Abner Baker. Very spooky. A couple more haunted places down here, and I've got that on another video. That's the William Blunt house. The windows have eyes, and there's the Craighead house right there. Better picture of the Craighead house, but down in this area here toward the river would have been the tree that he got hung in, probably something like that tree down there. Of course, it's gone, but they said it was down by the bluff, so down by the river, it's kind of hilly, drops off there, and there's a good fishing place for back in the day because there's a creek that comes down there. It intersects, but that's where it happened, somewhere down in there. And up that way would be the courthouse. There it is, Craighead Jackson house. Well, look at that. Here's an old thing to wipe my boots off with. How about that? Not a whole lot in the sea in here. In fact, I don't think you see hardly anything. But the quick story about this place is there was a maid downstairs cooking in the fireplace, and her dress caught on fire, and in a frantic to try to put the fire out, she actually fell in the fire, busted her head, it knocked her out, and she burned to death. That's a bad way to go. Ooh. Let's go check out the Blunt Mansion. So I do have another video of this right here, talking about it more, how it's haunted, but this is often a main place for just a lot of events, hospitals and makeshift things like that happen. A lot of people probably died here, but the big story of course, the Native Americans often said it as well. And I think I've got a few of those shots in my video previously of downtown Knoxville hauntings. Is the windows have eyes in them, and I think that's probably from the old glass that had dimples and little bubbles in them. That's what I would think, but who knows? It may be real eyes. Very scary. I've heard that there's a alley down here that has a lot of downtown art in it. Kind of scary just coming down through here though. People down in here just walking around. Spooky. Cool, look at this. Oh yeah, fish, man. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Uh-oh. Look at this, cool looking chopper. Must be see in here because truck right here. I think there's a Dolly picture of Dolly in here somewhere. I'm not gonna be able to see that. There it is right there. Don't know what was back in there. This is it right here.